Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Beyond Impact. My name is Colin Egglesfield, and as you've noticed, we are in this fabulous studio. My guest today is Leah Woodford. She's a powerhouse in the media space. She's also the founder and publisher of Speaker Life magazine. I had the privilege of meeting Leah at the Broadcast Your Authority event with Tamara Thompson in Las Vegas last month. And there's certain people that you meet in your life who I would say are angels. They just come into your life, and for whatever reason, you just have this special connection. And Leah, I'd have to say, I'm so grateful that we met, because just in this short time that we've gotten to know each other, I've learned a ton about you as someone who's come from the acting space and is now doing my own speaking on stages. There's a lot of things that I'm learning in this whole thing, because there's a difference between taking a script as an actor and memorizing it. You've got the producer, you have a director, you've got the set designer, everyone to be able to show up together to collaborate to tell a story. But as a speaker, a lot of this is all on us, right? So today we're going to be talking about all of you speakers out there, coaches, anyone who's interested in getting up on stages, anyone who is currently speaking. You're going to learn a lot during this episode, because Leah is the expert in the field of teaching people how to tell your story authentically and impactfully, and also branding. Branding is a huge part of getting up in front of an audience to not only be successful with the audience that you're speaking to, but how do you get the actual speaking job? A big part of what I've discovered over the past few years doing this, it's not as simple as setting up a website or social media. It really is about getting out there and connecting, and that's the benefit to having done that event at Broadcast Your Authority. So thank you, Tamara, for that. And Leah, would love to just start out by asking a little bit about your background, so people have an understanding about how you got to this space where you are a leader in the space of speaking and branding. What's your you mentioned you're from ASU. You went to ASU University and started out in
broadcasting
in
and mass communications. I wanted to be an anchor woman, and as I got into class, I realized your time in front of the camera, this is what they told a 19-year-old in class, your time in front of the camera will be over by the time you're 30.
Crazy.
It's just like, okay, that sucks. And then I started working at the local stations. First of all, they don't pay anything. But the second thing is, when you're doing hard news, there's a lot of PTSD. I knew I didn't want to do news. Being a correspondent gave me more freedom. When you are an anchor, they own your image. They own your name. You can't use it. I've always had a side hustle. Business has always fascinated me. So even while I was doing local news, I always had a side hustle. And it was great because I got all the exposure, but it allowed me the freedom to pursue my side hustle, my side business.
And that side hustle started out, you did some PR
I did
for a little bit?
I did some PR. I put LLCs together. I did pretty much all the grunt work for people to get noticed. I worked with small businesses that needed to be found. Competition was fierce, and they needed a brand, they needed an LLC, and they needed some PR. So that's what I did.
And you started Speaker Life magazine to bring more attention to not just yourself, but helping other speakers get that brand recognition.
I did it out of frustration.
Yeah?
Oh, yes. I became a professional speaker in 2007, and I realized there was a big organization out there, but it was kind of political and cliquish and outdated information. And I stayed with that organization for years. And in 2019, that's when I decided to create Speaker Life, because there needed to be a go-to hub with more current information. I mean, they were still doing the same things they did since the beginning of time. And our target demographic has changed, technology has changed, therefore everything in that industry has changed. In the meantime, they didn't. So what do? If you can't find it, you create it. And that's what I did.
And having gone from the television world, when did you start seeking out speaking opportunities, and what inspired you to want to get up onto stages and speak in front of audiences?
I just kind of fell into it. My speaker coach, her and I did a trade, and she goes, "You really should be speaking." And I really wasn't even on my radar. And then I saw her speak, and I saw the money she was making at the back of the room, and it's like, yeah, maybe I should be speaking, you know? And then I realized I really love serving people. And you shouldn't speak if you don't have anything to say or if you can't serve. And that's how I feel.
That's a big reason behind all of it. And what I talk about, and specifically what I learned from acting classes, was that when you first start learning a lot of this stuff and the idea of doing TV shows and film, it's something that's inspiring personally, but as you start to go into these auditions, what I started to realize was when you walk into a room, and the audition translates a lot into, you walk into any room, whether that's professionally, personally, if you make it about yourself and you worry about what other people think of you, that's where you trip up and you can sabotage yourself. But when you walk into that room with the energy of, how can I serve this room? How can I serve these people? How can I find out what they need? And that's what I've recognized that has translated very well from my acting to my speaking, because a lot of it is just getting up onto a stage, knowing who your audience is, knowing what their needs are. And when you just show up to be able to give people what they need, it's an incredibly gratifying experience, because that's when you tap into your purpose. And so this is where I've discovered my success on the stage and how it translates very well. But there's still the aspect of, how do you tell a good story on stage? As someone who is an actor, I pick up a script and I memorize the lines, and I breathe life into the words. But for some of our speakers out there who are maybe just starting out, or who have been on stages and are looking to get better at speaking, can you touch on what it is that you share with your speakers in terms of storytelling and the importance of dialing in your story and knowing who your audience is?
Well, first of all, knowing who your target demographic is huge. You really have, who are you, who do you serve, and what problem do you fix? That's going to be the determination whether you get hired or not. But more importantly, it has to be, I think you almost have to have a calling. You know what I mean? I think you have to really pour into the audience. You can't be talking to them up here. You have to go right into them. And your story, while it's important, it has to lead them to teaching points and something of value. I mean, I know speakers who, they're great speakers and they have great stories, but there's no message. You know, a story without a message or teaching points or something that's going to pour into your audience just doesn't make sense to me.
So would you say you start with the message? What's the message that you want to convey to your audience? How does it help them? And then from there, you say you craft your story based on
around that message.
Okay.
Around that message. Yeah, it has to, everything has to be about your audience. Whether it's a magazine or a TV show or anything, it really has to be with the audience in mind all the time.
You mentioned you have 3 talks that you give to audiences. Would you mind sharing with us what those talks are and what the messages
Well, and
are
they
of those
change.
3?
As I change, they will change. But I talk about the power of leverage a lot. The power of leverage, actually, I didn't create it, but my clients started asking for it, which is a good way to learn how to do talks. When your clients or your audience ask you for things, you already know you have an audience for that talk. So I teach the power of leverage, whether you have a podcast, in my case, a magazine, a leverage tool to leverage relationships. Instead of asking what you can get from that relationship, serve. Because when you serve first without an intention, it's amazing what comes back.
And when you speak about leverage, is it leveraging, growing and scaling your business or your ability to get on more stages? Is that what you mean by leverage?
It's all of the above. I leverage the magazine to get on stages. I created it in 2019 to get on stages in the middle of COVID, to start building relationships. Again, I told you I would love to have you on the cover of our magazine. I leveraged it.
Amazing. I will gladly
to
accept.
build that relationship. That's what I do. And now we have a new YouTube and podcast coming out. I'll be leveraging all three to do the same.
And your other two talks?
My other two talks, well, I'm switching them up a little bit. I really believe in thinking bigger. I think so many people think small. And I tailor it according to my audience, but really it's thinking bigger and getting bigger results.
And so when you're speaking in front of audiences for thinking bigger, getting out of your own way, who would your audience be for that? Do you speak at organizations, corporate events?
All of the above. You just tailor it a little bit more differently. The title and the key points might be a little bit different. The story's going to be the same. A couple of the teaching points will switch out.
And your third talk?
It's about branding.
Okay.
It's about branding because, let's face it, we're in an oversaturated world online. And if you are blending in and not standing out, nobody's going to see you. So visibility is the currency, and that's what I teach.
So we'd like to talk specifically just about how to be successful on the stage. Would you mind sharing maybe a few bits of advice to anyone out there who's looking to get onto stages and be successful with telling their story and resonating with an audience? What would you say are some of the things that you share with your clients that enabled them to get up in front of an audience confidently delivering their message?
Well, I'm going to quote my friend Robert Kiyosaki. Don't speak till you have something important to say. I love that. Also, make sure, because you always bring your story in, make sure it's a scar and not a wound. If you haven't come out the other side of it, don't bring it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then the third thing is get mentors. You know, don't be afraid to hire somebody who can get you to the finish line faster.
Love it. Excellent. And the clients that you work with, how do you work with them? Do you have workshops? Do you do retreats?
I do all of the above. I have personal clients. I do their branding. We work on their talks. I do their magazines. It depends on what they need, what their needs are.
What would you say are some of the challenges that speakers are going to face as they start pursuing getting on stages or even just being in front of audiences? What are some of the things that you would say to look out for or to prepare for?
Okay, first of all, you've got to be a good speaker before you really pursue that. But the second thing is you're invisible if you don't have a good brand and you don't have a good strategy behind it. That's the biggest challenge I see. I've seen some amazing speakers, but they don't have a brand and they don't have a visibility mechanism. And therefore, you know, they're not being seen.
And so
that is one of
case
the
in point,
reasons.
Speaker Life magazine. So how would this work if a speaker is interested in booking more stages and they were to contact you? What would that look like in terms of, do you interview them? Do you have them on your podcast? Like,
All
what
of
would
the
that process
above.
look like?
I mean, I interview them. I can put them on the magazine. They can be on the YouTube channel or the podcast. Or some of my other clients want their own magazines. And I've got to say, they're really crushing it with their magazines. It really elevates your brand to a completely new level. But for a new speaker, I would recommend Speaker Life. And that's why I created it. It's the go-to resource for speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs.
And for when it comes to branding, social media obviously is massively
not going away.
important, right?
It's your biggest SEO.
You know, and I think depending on who your audience is and who you speak to, obviously, whether that's Instagram or TikTok or LinkedIn, do you help your clients specifically tailor their marketing and their messaging
Absolutely.
for that type of audience?
Absolutely. And here's a thing. I work with my target demographic is probably 35 to 55.
Okay.
What I've noticed is they're still speaking to that age group. The problem is the people hiring you is much younger now. So you have to tailor your marketing to the event planners and to the events, and it's a much younger demographic.
So that brings us to speaker deck. Yes?
Yes.
So what would you say are some of the key things that are needed for a speaker deck? I think when I started out, my speaker deck was like 12 pages long. I was like, I need to have this in there and this in there. And after speaking with some people who gave me some feedback, obviously the more efficient that you can put into a less amount of space so that people at first glance can look at it, see what you do, what you speak about, who do you serve. What kind of insight or advice could you give for speaker decks?
You have to capture their attention within the first 3 to 4 seconds. You know, we used to have a little bit more time. We don't have that. Event planners probably aren't even looking at that. They might glance a few seconds. They're checking out your social media because these are people probably in their late 20s or 30s that are actually booking corporate events right now. So they're going to be looking at your social. And that's the biggest problem that I see with a lot of speakers. There's not a brand consistency everywhere. Your YouTube says one thing, if you have a YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, they're all different. If they're not all clear and concise and matching, if people look at your website and they don't know what you do, you've lost the sale.
On the speaker deck, on the very first page, what needs to be on that first page to get the HR director's attention?
The ROI for them. That's all they're caring about is what's in it for me. What am I going to get from this?
And for speakers, what's that process look like? Is it cold calling and reaching out to corporate HR event planners? Like, how does someone start really creating leverage with?
I have a really interesting story on that. I was inspired by Sherry Salata, Oprah's executive producer. I asked her, I interviewed her, how do you get in Oprah's book club? And she said, it's very simple. The people with really creative packaging goes in one pile. And the people in the manila envelopes go in the janitor's closet to be thrown out later.
So it's not necessarily just sending an email.
Nope. Everybody's sending an email. You have to be different. You have to get that attention currency. And you can't go through regular channels to do that. Now, I have created a customized swag box that I send out to celebrities to, you know, get their buy-in for cover magazines. But I started sending it to the event planners for the stages that I wanted to be on.
Okay. And would that just be just a simple Google search to find out who these HR
There's all kinds of lists.
Event?
There's all kinds of conference lists. There's so many lists you can go through, but decide who are you, who do you serve, what problem do you fix, and which people serve that community, and those are the ones that you go for.
Okay. And then as far as growing your brand on social media and getting it out there, what are some of the what's some of the insight that you share with your clients? Is it Facebook ads? Is it obviously networking is incredibly powerful and effective.
The right networking, I would say start going deep in your relationships, you know, and find out who you want, who would you like to be, and then again start with the end in mind, and then how do I get to this person? You know, start with the end in mind. I love Mel Robbins. How do I interview her? I actually did in 2009. So I would start with the end in mind and then work backwards.
Okay. And when you started out your speaking career, what would you say were some of the frustrations that you were experiencing that inspired you to start your magazine?
It's just, there was not one place to go. It was a piece here, a piece there. I had to piecemeal it together, if you know what I mean. And I didn't know what I didn't know. I finally hired somebody who was really great speaker. She's spoken 28 countries, one of the top 3% speakers. I mean, she's amazing, and she got me results. But having a mentor and having somebody who's already gone where you want to go, that's the best thing.
What about speaker bureaus? I've connected with a couple of them, and
they're order takers.
yeah, it seems like it. It's like they'll put you up on their website and then crickets. Right?
Well, again, I hate to say it, they want somebody who's already speaking and that's already bookable because they don't want to work. You know, and nobody is going to market you as well as you market you. So that's really what I teach my clients. Speaker bureaus are great, but until you're already in demand, you know, they may say yes, but they're not going to put any money behind it. It's just like the music industry.
What are some of the fees that a beginning speaker can expect to make? And is it beneficial to offer speaking for free at conferences and organization events to be able to get your foot in the door?
I would say starting out, you need to be minimum $5,000 or they won't even talk to you. They'll know. They'll know.
You say don't go lower than $5,000.
No, I would not. Okay. I would not go. And I don't like the word speaking for free. You know, I would do a compromise. I would say, hey, I can come and speak to your audience. Would I have an opportunity to talk to them at the end of my session? And you can close more deals at the back of the room. A speaker fee should not, but you got to have that conversation right up front. If they're not going to let you have a table at the back of the room, I wouldn't do it.
And what are some of the things that you would recommend for speakers to have in the back of the room? Obviously, there's books, there's courses, there's all that sort of thing. But
all of those things, whatever is going to relate to that audience the best.
Would you say that having your own book is a necessity or beneficial to book more stages?
It's beneficial. It doesn't have the same perks as it used to because people don't read the way they used to. So it really doesn't provide the joie de vivre it used to.
So you're saying in order to stand out, you need to lean into what's different about who you are.
You know, and you have to I have a questionnaire, a clarity questionnaire that I work with my clients. Who are you? Who do you serve? What problem do you fix? And what's your calling? You know, what's on your heart to serve? If you don't have that calling, you've got to find your purpose. And the reason you need your purpose is because it's got to be pretty big, and you got to have a pretty big why behind that purpose, because when things get tough and you want to quit, what's your why? Yep. For me, it's my kids. I walk through fire for my kids. Whatever I do, everything, they're my why.
And so do you talk about that?
I do talk about it.
In your talks, bringing in your own personal stories about your kids, and also you're a fellow cancer survivor.
Yep.
Do you talk about those experiences?
I tailor it to that audience or to that client, wherever they're at. I try to meet them where they are. If they have kids, they'll relate. If they don't have kids, they won't relate. But it has to be something that's bigger than themselves. I think that God put us all here with a purpose, and we're all meant to serve. And I don't think a lot of people ever really figure out what their purpose is or why we're here. You know, I'm still a journalist. Why? That 5-year-old kid, why do we do this? Why do I do? I think we need to stay curious.
So true. Yeah. A lot of what we do in the acting space and what appeals to me is every time I read a new script, I'm always curious about how can I delve into the psychology of who this person is? So a lot of what we talk about is purpose, and in order to be able to tell that story, you really got to get connected to who this character is on a deep foundational core level. What are the values, and what does this character want? So when it comes to getting up in front of an audience, what has helped me become more confident, because as a self-diagnosed introvert and someone who used to be terrified of getting up in front of audiences, what really helped me get over that fear of speaking in front of people is getting a clear connection to my purpose and really choosing who I was on a deep foundational level, because it's so easy to grow up and have everyone tell you who you are, your parents, school, where you were born. We take those cues about who we think we are. And what started happening for me was when I started getting in front of these casting directors and directors, I started to feel more confident playing these characters that I was auditioning for than my own self getting up in front of a group of people. And it was really what I realized, the difference between me being more confident walking into a room to play a World War II fighter pilot or a vampire or whatever it was that I was auditioning for, was that I went through the process of choosing who this character was, what role I needed to play in order to fulfill on the bigger picture story, the bigger theme of what we were there to share with whoever was going to watch this project. And so from there, I essentially have just extrapolated that to my clients when I teach them my communications consultancy and my Beyond Impact class, is who are you on a deep foundational level? Choose those 3 core values. And then from there, we do touch on story and what is the impact that you want to make on your audience. And like you said, you want to know what is the impact, and then you work backwards and you essentially meet in the middle from where you're at, where your audience is. And then I like the idea, much like when I'm filming TV shows and movies, I love the transformation of showing up in one place, and it requires you to really tune into the energy of the room. I love the energy of the room when I get in there. You can tell, and this can be very disconcerting when you get in front of an audience and they're just looking at you and staring you down like, okay, buddy, what do you got for me? Why should I pay attention to you?
And you're going to have a lot of that in the beginning.
You definitely are going to have a lot of that. Yeah. And after going on over 2,000 auditions, after writing my book,
you put some reps in.
I put some reps in. And I've had plenty of experience of walking into these rooms, and you've got the Warner Brothers executive, just staring you down, looking like like bored out of his mind. Some people will start taking out their phones and start texting in the middle of your audition. But the crazy thing is, that's just the outside facade. Once I started booking the job, the guy that had the most stone-faced, bored look on his face was the one that would come up and say, you know what, Colin, you really inspired me with your audition. And I was like, you could have fooled me. So you can't always let what their outward experience or their countenance throw you off. You've got to show up. And again, it's not about taking your cues from your audience. You got to take your cues from yourself. And what has helped me too is take your cues by being connected on a deep level to source, to God, whatever it is. For me, it is a deeply spiritual experience, for whether that's getting on a stage or playing a character. And when you connect to source, it is infinite power,
how can
infinite
you lose
confidence.
If God's right there with you,
right? And so this is where I love to lean more into the spiritual aspect of communication and branding. And this is what has really served me in this space, because if I were to show up as Colin in front of my audience or into these roles, having that experience of going through my acting classes and these reps in front of these big auditions, that's the biggest thing that I've learned and the biggest takeaway. And I think on a deep foundational level too, I would say you're spiritual in the regard of...
Absolutely. Well, we're brother and sister in cancer.
Yes,
so
we are.
You really learn a lot from cancer. Priorities get switched immediately, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
And everything that seems so important really has no meaning anymore.
Yep.
And we've both gone through it 3 times. So we
Yep.
know. We
And
know.
and as Robin Roberts, ABC
Yes.
correspondent, she says your mess is your message. And so a lot of what I talk about is the resilience of moving through this cancer journey, navigating what that looks like, leaning into you get to decide who you choose to be in the face of all of this. And it's very easy to let our outside experiences get us down and define the way in which we wake up every morning. But the only thing that we have is our ability to decide who we choose to be in the face of whatever we face in life. And that's the thing that's gotten me through a lot of my challenging times in
Well,
life.
and I was reading about your cancer journey and the way you were filming all my children, filming and then going to chemo and then surgery.
Radiation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, what
Yeah.
a trooper.
But that's what got me through it. Committing to that role that I needed to play to be able to navigate what this was going to look like. And once you connect to that, I mean, that's the leverage that really helped me get through this experience. But as we wrap up here, what would you say are some last nuggets of advice that you would share with my audience who's here? Thank you again for being here and for sharing all of this insight so far. Some nuggets of insight that maybe, again, some beginning speakers out there. And if you are thinking about getting up on the stage and you are not sure where to start, you can contact Leah.
Yeah, just subscribe to the magazine.
Subscribe to the magazine.
It's free. It's a free resource because I created what I wanted that wasn't around. SpeakerLifeMagazine.com. Really, again, to quote Robert Kiyosaki, make sure that you have something really important to say. And again, your why is got to be bigger than your excuse because there's going to be days when you are just not feeling it. And the other thing is always start with the end in mind and work backwards.
Awesome. Leah, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate you. And everyone else out there who, again, if you're interested in getting more insight or advice on how to get up onto stages, and I'm telling you, everyone has something to say. Everyone has something of a message. Even if you're not wanting to get up in front of audiences, if you're feeling like you have something to say and are just having difficulty learning how to articulate that or express it, you don't have to stay stuck. There's so many resources out there, whether it's Leah, myself. So feel free to reach out to us on Instagram.
I'm on everything but Twitter.
Okay. And what are your Instagram handles?
Well, I have two, Leah Woodford, Lea Woodford, and TheRealSpeakerLife.com, or The Real Speaker
And if
Life.
you haven't subscribed yet to the Speaker Life, this is
Thank
in
you.
print and digital. Yeah?
Yes, it is.
All right. Awesome, Leah. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And until next time, make an impact.